Okay, hopefully the volume's good enough. 12. Obvious Rufus, his comments. When I was needing a garum, I would be saying, he's vindicated himself satisfactorily, or he's avenged himself enough. We'll ignore that quad for now. From the dispotor of a rich personal enemy, I was a consort or a sharer of all fortune. Modo usually means recently, so recently I was a sharer of all the fortune, and I will be seeking now, it looks like, my diurnum from basically begging and getting what he can. A diurnum is a daily allowance. I'll make that the daily dictionary, should have it here. Diurnus as a neuter substance. It's a daily portion or an allowance. Okay, back to the plot. Of Marvellius, here's words. Now he dares to ask, he who prefers to die than to be told his own words back to him, to himself. I owe some mercy to many, or some pity, and I've bore mercy towards many, multus. Whoever he is, who makes me similar, I guess, to himself in any calamity, I will have him or consider him just as if, what have we got here? Gradu cognatus, as if he's some step of a relation. At some point he's a relation, or the household gradu probably means outside the house, like cousins, etc. I know how acerbum it is, I know how bitter it is to beg from external people, outside people. I know how grave and serious it is to be repelled by your own household, your domestics. I know how cruel it is every day to hope for death and to beg for life or ask for life. Even if you do not hate him who did this injury or made an injury for me, I hate him who did an injury to you, Tibby. 13. The division here. So, you've heard now from several people. An antique, or the old way of divisions of controversies, was simple. Whether the most recent thing you were told was more subtle, had more details, or whether it's merely just making things more burdensome. So you've heard from both sides. You've got to think, was the first thing you heard better? You can judge this ipsy for yourself. I'll expose or place out these things, which the veterans, which the people in the olden times, what they found, and what the sequenting generations, the people that come after, what they constructed for their, what are these called, declamations. So someone called Latro is now talking. Latro made these questions, actually, so it's about him in the third person. He's divided into justice and law and equity and fairness. Whether he ought to be abdicated, whether he should be disinherited, whether this ought to happen, whether it's able for him and whether it ought to happen. Whether he should, thus is the question. Is it necessary for him to nourish and sustain his father? And because of this, he's not able to be disinherited, which he did with the law compelling him or forcing him to do this, so he was obeying the law. Hoc. This, in these questions, he's divided it. Whether someone abdicatus who's been disinherited, does he not cease to be a son, or does he cease to be a son? So this is now the question. Who not only was disinherited, but even was adopted by another person, who was his uncle, I believe. Even if he was a son, in the eyes of the law, whether someone who doesn't nourish and support his father, should he be punished? Just as an ager, a sick person, a victus, someone who's bound in, maybe in jail, someone who's now a captive, whether some excuse, the law should accept some excuse of a son. So whether in this, the law ought to accept this excuse, whether he ought to have been disowned, the question is laid out this way, per hoc. Whether, even if he was unworthy, indignus, he who was being nourished, was he unworthy of it? And nevertheless, rightly he did it, he who he nourished. You can see the difference between the passive and the active. Then whether he was worthy, the one who was nourished. So the law is looking at it. Is the father unworthy or worthy to have been supported? 14. The new declaimers, with some Greek authority, they inject or add first this question. Don't think that O should be there. Whether it is possible for someone adopted to be disinherited. Can you disinherit an adopted person? Cestius uses this lady here. Heck, this. He adds a question. Alterum. He adds even another question. Whether it is possible for even for an adopted person to be disinherited because of this fault that before he was adopted, it was known this problem if it was known to the person who was going to adopt him. So can an adopted person be disinherited if the person who adopted him was already aware before the adoption of the problem? Now this is dependent on, or is involved in the part of the equality, the other thing we saw at the top of the list. And it's more of a tractatio or handling, more than a question of how you should handle it rather than a question. Gallio, he doubled this first question of latrine, and he did it thus. It was permitted for me to nourish him even with you forbidding it. Then it was not permissible or allowed, so it wasn't permitted not to nourish him. A couple of nons here. In the prior part, he claimed this or vindicated this, or he's fighting for this. There was not possible for a son to be disinherited because of this, of something that was in his own potestate, something of his own power. So it didn't have anything to do with the adopted father. This is something he was just doing on his own. And now it is forbidden to have mercy or pity for no one. You shouldn't forbid people to be merciful. What if you forbade me to weep when I saw a man suffering a calamity? What if you forbid, on account of some honest reason or fact, me to succor or help someone who is in a peril, in a danger? Our affections, our affectus, fourth declension, in our power are. The lobe has non actually, so our affections or feelings, it's not in our power to control them. Certain rights are not even written, they're not written, but they are more certain than in all things written, the unsaid things. Although, Sim, I am the son of a family, if you want English up a bit of a father, it is permitted for me to stretch out a stipend, a bit of money, to a beggar, a mendico, and to inject a bit of dust on a cadaver. It's unjust not to stretch out a hand to a collapsus person. This is the beggar. He's lapsus are used for slipping, but it looks like he's bent over here. It is the communal right of mankind to do so. No one is begrudging or hating someone who demands justice, who prosum, which means help, who by which he will help another person, an alterior. And that's it for now.